Have you ever noticed that no matter how much you achieve, it still doesn't fully satisfy you? You hit the goal, you grow the business, you heal the trauma, you find the partner, and yet there's still that quiet ache, like a subtle anxiety, a feeling that something is missing. What if that feeling isn't dysfunction? What if it's the deepest truth of being a human being? Today, I want to talk about the shift from leadership to lovership and why this might be the most important transition in your life. And I'll give you some practical tools that you can apply into your life today. So if you're someone that's high functioning and successful and self-aware, but still feel slightly like you're bracing yourself, this is for you. Most of us are taught how to lead, right? You got to lead in your career and lead in your family and lead in your healing and lead in your mindset. And I am passionate about that. But we were never taught how to love from wholeness. So leadership becomes a projection. We learn to manage our emotions, to manage our environment, to manage other people's perceptions, and to manage outcomes. And over time, leadership can turn into hyper independence, and that hyper independence can become loneliness. And you might not call it that, right? You might be calling it discipline or standards or strength, but underneath there is a unspoken exhaustion. And this is why this matters, because we live in a world that glorifies performance and production, right? Achievement is the reward. When it comes to emotional depth, it's tolerated. That existential longing that people feel is often medicated, right? And when love is not at the center, leadership becomes extraction, right? We extract from the earth and we extract from relationships and we extract from ourselves, from our body. And that's why burnout is a global thing and why anxiety is like the epidemic that we're all suffering from as a culture. We are in a moment where connection feels fragile and the world needs leaders, sure, but it needs leaders rooted in lovership. There is something deeper here. Across all spiritual traditions, there is a recognition of separation. In the Vedas, there is the idea that one becomes two for the joy of becoming one again. Light had to leave source in order to create manifestation. That means that that longing that we feel is not a personal failure. It is the creative tension of existence. We are walking around carrying a subtle wound of separation from infinity, and it goes deeper than our own wounding from our traumas and our stories. And we are trying to fill it with success, with relationships, with busyness, with just getting more things, accumulating. But the void is not meant to be filled. It's meant to be recognized and met. Lovership is the art of meeting it. I know this intimately because for years I was just what you call, overly performing, overdoing, high performing. I was building and achieving and getting the thing and getting the job and doing the things. But underneath it all, I was trying to earn something that is just invisible. I thought I could just fill it with doing more. And if I just created enough, and if I just supported more people, and if I just had that job, and if I just knew enough and learned more, and that subtle ache just was subtly, like the undercurrent always playing in the background. It wouldn't disappear. It didn't. There came a moment in my life when my body began to just shut down, right? I was dealing with insomnia, with disconnection, with overdoing, people pleasing, overextending myself. And I realized that just something had to change. I wasn't exhausted because I was overdoing. I was exhausted because I was leading from survival. I was leading from the wound, and the wound cannot produce love. It can produce competence, it can produce charisma, it can produce some fun results, but it can't produce peace. And so the shift can happen for us. It happened to me when I stopped trying to fill that longing with things, with people, with experiences. And I just started sitting with it. When I stopped outsourcing it to partners and to productivity, then I began to take responsibility for my own energy, for my story, for integrating my story, for doing the inner work that it required, for learning to regulate my nervous system and feeling myself calm and land and arrive. And as I kept doing that throughout the years, I realized that there's something even deeper than that, that there is a wound that is inherited through existence. Lovership is not romance. Well, it's not just romance. It's not also being passive. And it definitely doesn't mean that you lose your edge or you lose your hunger for life. Lovership begins when you're in right relationship with all things, with other people, with nature, with your emotions, with your past, with your desires, with life itself. It's taking full responsibility for how you relate to your inner world without shame, without blame, without collapsing into victimhood. Because lovership is what says, okay, this happened to me and I carry this wound, and I'm doing something about it, and this is how I meet it. And it's in that act of meeting that void of that subtle anxiety that we all carry, that we start to understand that that is a magical place, that that place can only be filled by our own presence, right? We can open ourselves up to let source move through us, and it's in how we choose to meet that emptiness, that longing, and sit with it. And it's really beautiful because when we sit with this longing instead of resisting it with that, what our body might take as like subtle anxiety or nervousness, and that choice to meet it, it's freedom. Now let's make this practical because I know it can sound a little out there. So here are 5 ways to begin shifting and maturing from leadership to lovership. The first one is simply to stop trying to eliminate the longing. The next time you feel that quiet ache, that anxious nervousness, stop distracting yourself. Avoid the urge to distract, to scroll. Don't plan the next achievement. Just sit with it for a moment. Feel where it lives in your body and learn to name it without judgment. Lovership begins with presence. The second step is that you reclaim responsibility without attack. Ask yourself, where am I outsourcing my sense of wholeness? Am I outsourcing it to a partner, to productivity, to validation? And gently bring yourself back. Responsibility is not about self-blame. It's a reclamation of your authority. The third step is this, very powerful. Regulate before you react. Leadership reacts, it protects, it defends, it fights for. Lovership pauses and relates. Before you respond to a trigger, just breathe. Feel your feet on the earth. This helps you slow down your nervous system. From a regulated state, your responses will always change. It would help other people receive what you're actually saying and trying to communicate. The fourth step is that create beauty. Instead of seeking validation, create beauty. Lovership, the wound wants to be felt because it is the place where poetry comes from, where beauty comes from, where our intent to connect and create contribution, whatever that looks for you, whether it's moving or serving something beautiful, whether it's a beautiful meal, an act to your body with devotion, serving someone quietly when no one is looking. And when you create from love, you reconnect to source and you finally allow the experience of union to happen because you are allowing source to move through you. So we come into that yoga, that union through our seva, through our service, through our expansion of life-giving values, right? That's why we don't want to eliminate this longing. We want to meet it. The fifth one is design an environment that supports wholeness. You cannot sustain lovership in a chaotic environment. Look at your relationship, look at your calendar, look at your habits. Do they support regulation? Do they support truth? And do they support deep connection? If not, remember that you are the author of your own story and you're the architect, and you can start redesigning. Embodiment requires structure so that you can have flow. The wound of separation is not something to heal away. It is the birthplace of devotion. When you stop trying to fill the void and start relating to it, love becomes the center. And from that place, leadership becomes humane and it becomes creative and you become magnetic. If this resonates with you, if you recognize yourself as a high-functioning, self-aware, slightly exhausted leader, then this is your invitation. I guide people through a process of moving from survival-based leadership through reclaiming, designing their own life, through embodying this work of soul set, of lovership, If you're ready to stop performing and start creating a life that reflects who you are, schedule a soul set intro call with me. The link is below. You don't need more strategies. What you need is great alignment in your life. And if you're ready for that, I will meet you there. Thank you.